Thanks for joining us on Coast to Coast Pest Talk.
Here's Sweet Pete Schopen and Jam in 104. And that was the intro, not me. That was the intro, right?
Oh my God.
Sweet Pete Schopen.
Sweet Pete.
It was brutal.
What's up, guys? Thanks so much for tuning in to Coast to Coast is what our podcast is called, I believe, right, Andy? Coast to Coast Pest Talk. We have a special guest for the second time now, I believe.
Yeah.
Pete Schopen, also known as the Schopenator. He has many names.
Goes by many names.
We're going to be discussing the PCT Top 100 list. Andy has made some amazing graphs, and there's some cool stuff in the works. Let's jump on in here.
All right. So, Pete, Gabe, welcome to year 3 of us doing this analysis. You know, we've been doing this now for a couple of years. Every year when the top 100 list comes out, I'm like licking my chops to get into it and get the numbers all together. I've compiled them over the years, so I have all 23 years of the data compiled into a data set, and I've been using also NPMA survey results and whatnot to kind of get some perspective, let's say, on what the numbers mean. So I think right off the bat, I wanted to go to the bad news first, and I'm going to bring up a little pie graph. And if you're only listening to this pie graph is animated, and it shows the entire industry being swallowed up.
No.
Yeah. So we have the largest companies, sort of like a Pac-Man, if you imagine pie graph, swallowing up, I think topping out at like 53% of the industry for the biggest. And in this case, it's the biggest two companies, companies over $1 billion in revenue over the last number of years. And it's pretty striking to see sort of the slow progression initially, and then just the last 5 years just absolutely eat the industry up. Gabe, by your reaction, I think this you don't look at this as a positive.
No, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this before, but just to see it again in a moving graph like this is just so stark. Holy smokes.
Andy, I think an interesting theme too would be, what is the total revenue of each pie graph? Each section of it would be, I'm not trying to add more work to you, but I think that would be important to know too, right?
Yeah, and I could grab that. I know that at the top end, at the end of this, when it finishes its animation, the top 2 are like 7 billion or so. So that big pink part that's 53% is something like 7 billion, and I think the industry as a whole, according to the NPMA, this year is something like 12.4. So it's pretty striking. I think also interesting here is that mid-range company, 50 million to 1 billion, those companies, once they settle out at about a third of the top 100, they kind of stay there.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't lost or gained the market share as far as a share of the top 100, company revenues.
That would be a company like Truly Nolan and also Arrow.
Arrow,
big one in there. Yeah,
exactly. Those sort of like iconic kind of big independent, still independent companies. They pretty much hold steady, and so that growth is really in those sort of smaller companies, let's say, that 10 to 50 million or less than 10 million that were on the top 100. That's where that got eaten up, that middle.
And if I remember, I read the article, but now I should have had it in front of me. Ecolab was not at $1 billion yet, correct?
Right. I think they're at 880 million.
Yeah. Okay.
So they'd be in that second tier. I don't want to say second tier, but that just under a billion,
right,
of large companies.
And also, this is the 18,100 NPMA companies, or this is only companies that.
This is only companies that report on the top 100.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a revenue share, sort of a breakout of how by company size, how they sort of capture market share relative to the other 99 companies.
So there would be two more stats here for you, nerd. I mean, Andy. Two more stats here for you would be number one would be to get a hold of the NPMA and find out what percent of pest control companies are actually under 10 million overall, right? Because a very small part of that's going to be 10 million. Where was the cutoff this year? Was it like 7.5, 8 million?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
It was like 7.4. Yeah.
Yeah, 7.4. So that would be the first stat. Would be how much of this pie graph change if you added in all the companies under 10 million all. And then I also wonder if there was a gross guess by the NPMA as far as companies that also don't register at the NPMA. There are so many one-man shows out there making 40, 50,000 a year that I was just curious how big of a chunk of the pie they would have too.
Okay, so that would bring us here to our next graph.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Now, dang it, it's covered by the logo.
No.
Oh, no, the most important part of the graph is covered by the logo.
Oh, hey.
Hey, I just did it.
Nice.
Look at that.
Good
Okay, so this is the 23-year history of the PCT Top 100. And so the smaller, when you look on the left, sort of orangey line is the top 100 cumulative revenue. So each year, if you add up every single one of those 100 companies, how much money they reported, that's how much we're graphing here. Now, the red dotted line above that, to begin with, is the NPMA's own estimate every year of the size of the U.S. pest control market. So you can see at the beginning, we had this big bunch of headroom between the top 100 companies and what the NPMA estimated the total size of the market was. As you move forward, and interestingly, the last 2 years crossing over. So what this means is that the top 100 companies on that list are reporting greater revenues than the NPMA is estimating the total size of the industry to be.
Yep, it outperformed it. That's amazing. Don't you think, Andy, from 2010 through 2020, it's pretty stable.
Yep.
Don't you think that would, I would think, continue? So even though their estimates maybe didn't, I would think in reality it would continue into infinity.
It seems that way. And that's what I wonder. I wonder if you look at 2020 and beyond, where we have some crazy fiscal policies happening. I absolutely saw a ramp up of consolidation, and that's where we see this crossover happen. So either the NPMA's estimates didn't keep pace with industry growth, or I don't know. So like obviously these shouldn't be able to cross.
No, they can't.
There's no way.
Yeah.
So did the industry grow faster in 22, 23, 24 than NPMA was estimating? Which could very well be the case. In any event, if the NPMA's estimation capabilities are somewhat accurate or even consistent over this 23-year period, it definitely indicates that it has squeezed out a lot of the market for smaller companies.
Yeah, right. So that's interesting because we got 2020 with COVID.
Yep.
And if you look right there, I mean, Schopen Pest Solutions would be right in the middle of that, right at the crossover, would be exactly where Schopen Pest Solutions is. So I think my company was, we're to blame for this.
That's what it is.
It's Schopen all the way. But no, on a serious note, while COVID was not the main reason that I sold my company, it still was a reason. And so I would think a lot of companies were expecting, right? We're expecting a giant COVID recession fallout that did happen. I mean, price of eggs went up, and stuff like that. But for the most part, they're still buying companies at 3, 6, 9 times. I mean, it's so stupid EBITDA. So it's that's an interesting graph. I think this one.
Okay, so here's something that really affected us when we had talked about this the last 2 years, is if you look at those last two, before this year, where the PCT Top 100 crosses over and basically squeezed out any remaining market share. Those were some pretty depressing years, the last 2 years. I'll tell you what, as I'm talking to Gabe, I'm going, oh my God, we've lost. Like if you look at the early 2000s or so, the small companies, the companies that weren't on the top 100, the little companies were literally the plurality of the industry. We were the backbone of the industry, right? The small companies. That has completely turned over. And my concern when we looked at these was, is this an irrevocable change? Is this like Walmart moves into your town and they put the shoe company out of business and the baker out of business and the meat shop out of business, and those guys aren't coming back? Is it that kind of change, or do we have qualities? Because here, my hope was, and this was Gabe's I guess encouragement, that the little guy can win. That if you didn't win market share competitively, you're not going to be able to keep market share competitively. You're going to lose it. Like if you just buy it and couldn't have won it on your own accord by your own qualities, does that mean that the little guy still has a chance?
I think, and I'm sorry, Gabe, Andy and I have been talking this whole time.
You're great. Nope.
Okay. Andy, I think what you're seeing, and this is something I promote with all these companies that I consult for, is grassroots guerrilla warfare. You know, we're getting down there, getting back to handing out business cards, getting back out to making connections, referral programs, all these things. There's a gentleman, I don't know if he wants me to name him or not, so I'll just say let's say he's in southern Oklahoma. He just finished his first year at $290,000.
Nice.
First year. He's already had his first $50,000 month, and he's only been in business for 14 months. Yeah. So look at Gabe Seymour. I mean, a perfect example. I think you're going to see a renaissance. I think you're going to see a renaissance of the small operator growing to, I don't know if you want to call it mid-sized or not, but you know, of that to 20 to 30 person range, technician range.
Yeah. So now the other interesting thing on this graph before we leave this one is that if you look at the 23-year history of tracking the PCT Top 100, this is the first time ever that the revenue this year is lower than the revenue last year. The PCT Top 100 is smaller this year. They lost ground against what I call now the sub 100. That's everybody, basically everybody else, all the little guys. We have never seen this before. This is the definition of unprecedented.
Yeah. It just goes back to what I was saying. I really think you're going to see a renaissance of the small company, mid-sized company. I really do.
Yeah. So if the industry from year to year over year grew, the PCT Top 100 lost ground, can we attribute basically all that growth that happened in the industry over the last year went to the sub 100? They didn't
in Portland specifically.
Mostly there.
Mostly in Portland. Between Pest Patrol and Kanga, I think they're kicking butt up there in Portland.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Kanga.
There you go. I almost, when I plotted these out, I can't tell you how excited I was. Like I was like happy days. Holy cow. So another interesting fact here, we're going to go to the next graph. And this one is interesting because not to pick anything out, but we have to look at the data and talk about it. Like I feel like we ignore a lot of things for the sake of not upsetting people. And this is the graph that shows the disparity between number 1 and number 100. Okay. So how much does the top 100 span? And it was pretty stable for a long time. It got crazy the last few years as Rentokil purchased Terminix. Number 1 took a huge leap. And now number 1 has taken a step back. And again, for the first time ever, of the $440 million that the PCT Top 100 lost, $330 million of that was Rentokil giving it back, giving market share back, and losing ground. So a third of $1 billion, and it didn't go to the other top 100 companies. It went outside of the top 100. Otherwise, we would have seen no change overall in the top 100, right? If Rentokil lost it to Rollins, it just stays in the top 100. It left the top 100. That means the little guy beat the heck out of these bigger companies. In this case, to the tune of $350 million of clawback of market share.
That's amazing. That's an amazing stat.
It's unbelievable.
Well, it's especially because don't the little guys. I mean, what last year we talked through it more in depth, but like the market share of the like one-man operators, it's revenue wise, it's teeny. What is it, like $1 billion or 1.5 billion?
It was it was less than $1 billion based on comparisons between the NPMA estimates and the top 100. So at this point, you pretty much doubled your market share as the sub 100 company. So in an industry that's $12.5 billion, if you gain $1.5 billion, that's more than 10% of the industry in market share that the small companies, little tiny one-man operations, 2, 3, 5, 10-man operations are clawing back and winning. They're not just growing the pie, they're eating someone else's piece of pie, which is crazy.
I think it has to do a lot of times in the service industry. Look at airline flights, and Gabe, once again, Gabe's too young for this, but back when I was when I was a kid and in my teens and even in my 20s, when you flew first class, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And when you flew coach, it was you felt comfortable. But now you're crammed in on these airplanes. Just crammed in. First class is you get a meal now, but that's about it. You don't get the hot rag anymore and stuff like that. But I think, unfortunately, it's happening in pest control too. For years and years and years, right? We were undervalued, right? And now you're starting to see. I think people are overvaluing pest control a little bit too much on the service side of it, right? Doing a carpet ramp job for $475 or something, it's just silly. But when you're with the mom and pops, you're getting that that service. They get to know the technician, they get to know the people involved. Where with one of the mega companies, they're getting a new face every time. Right. They're getting a 20-minute outdoor service. That's all they're getting. They're not getting anything on the inside anymore. They're doing granular treatments in Chicago in January. It's just, we've totally, customer service, I think at the top is started to decline. I think this is an example of it.
Yeah. Now I take this to mean, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I want you to challenge this. The big companies at scale don't have as much of advantage. They can't work in a structural advantage like somebody like Walmart can, because you have to still buy gasoline locally. You have to get labor out of the same labor market locally. You have to buy trucks and materials. And so like the advantages that a Walmart can bring, where they can leverage onto, I'm going to outsource to China and control the entire logistics and supply chain. They can control their costs in ways that a service provider that has to put boots on the ground routinely into a place, you just don't have an advantage of scale that is insurmountable to a small competitor. Does that bear water?
Yeah, it does. And but we all know this. Pest control is one of the most profitable businesses out there, no matter what scale, how big you are, no matter where they have to purchase their goods. Pest control still is. It's the squeezing those dimes, right? That's my problem with our industry right now. But once again, I think the solo operator, the guy who has 4 or 5 technicians, they're spending 45 minutes on a service. Yeah. I hope. Where like I said, some of the behemoths, I won't name any of them, but some of the behemoths maybe aren't doing that anymore. And
so what's your? Let me see if I understand this, and let me rephrase it. So what you're saying is if the small operator doesn't have to squeeze his expenses as hard and can still be very profitable and provide a much more, let's say, premium service and not risk, he's not having to give away his margins to do that. There's so much headroom there that you're like, I can spend an hour at a site and make a great killing, on that. And sure, you could make more profit if you squeeze it down to 20 minutes and charge the same as I am, but you're going to lose your market share doing that. Is that kind of what I'm understanding? Okay.
Yep, I think so. I think that's what I meant.
And you end up having, when it's like you do get the economies of scale as you grow bigger, but then you also, if you're not careful, end up getting all this middle bloat of like inefficiencies. And okay, now the president has to make sure that the CEO and the CFO and they're all on board, and then they have to tell the director of ops, and it's like all of a sudden you've got a 15-person, chain of reporting commands, and everything gets jumbled. It's like just a mess. Whereas at the small companies, you can say, hey, Johnny, go take care of Mrs. Susan, and he goes out and does it.
Yeah, 30 years ago, I used to be quizzical. I wouldn't make me crazy, but I was like, I don't know why they think this way. But a lot of customers, I'd rather go with the mom and pop than the big company. But I feel like 30 and 40 years ago, the bigger companies were still pretty good. I mean, I used to admire Orkin. I did. I mean, my dad was an old Orkin guy. They used to have their beautiful jackets and their what are those things called on the
the little lapel things or whatever they were. Yeah, what
it's called now. I had it right to my tongue there. And they had the commercials were fantastic. Remember I think it was during a Super Bowl, they had the roach crawling across the screen, and people were throwing stuff at their TVs because they thought there was a roach on their screen, And so it was just nowadays. I feel like it's all about the profit shares versus customer service, and like I could be wrong. It's just my opinion, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, well, and this is the first time I've seen like a large scale empirical evidence for that idea. This is like literally the first time in any kind of data that I've looked at industry wide and said, holy cow, like here it is on a nationwide level, as opposed to just like locally. I think anecdotally we'll all say, people are like, oh, there was an acquisition in my town. Are you scared about, a big competitor? And we all go, no, we're not scared at all. This is going to be great. We're going to get tons of accounts. We never really have seen this bear out in like empirical data, like a third party, data. This is the first one I've ever seen.
I mean, I heard, this is just what I heard. I have nothing to back this up with, but when some of the larger companies are buying out the smaller companies, that they fully expect to lose 30% of their client base within the first 18 months. I mean, wow. I heard that from somebody, a little industry insider, but I don't know if that's a fact or not, but it seems to hold true.
Yeah. So does that mean that it becomes less advantageous for that sort of business model of acquisition growth if that money gets more expensive? So
far it isn't. So far it's fine. Yeah. I mean, right? I mean, Rollins is growing their company that way right now, isn't right? Rent-A-Kill was until the whole Terminix thing, and now I don't know if they slowed down. I'm not sure. Yeah, Anti-CMEX hasn't slowed down. They're still buying up people. What's the company Point's involved with? The parent company for Point.
Is it Pest Local?
No, something like Pestco.
Oh yeah, Pestco. Yeah.
Is it Pestco? I feel stupid right now. I should know that. But I mean, they're buying up companies still. I mean, so it's still out there, still happening. But it's so I don't think it's slowed down quite yet, Andy.
Yeah. It's got to get much worse for them before it slows down. So everybody get out there and sell. Just Pestco. The little guys. I'm just talking to the little guys. Okay, I have another graph here, and this one actually shows us the comparison of the sub 100 companies as a share over time. So if you take the NPMA estimated industry size and subtract out the PCT top 100, what's the remainder? So what's left over after the top 100 revenue? You can see in 2008, it was almost $2.5 billion available for the sub 100 companies. And you can see at the last 2 years, it had gone negative, where this PCT Top 100 was reporting greater than the NPMA estimates. And at this point has recovered now for the little guy to be almost $500 million. So from last year to this year, from the comparison of the top 100 to the NPMA estimate, the little guy, the sub 100 companies, have recovered almost $1.5 billion in market share, which is staggering. Just absolutely staggering.
That is a lot of Evos being sold at Pest Patrol.
Yes.
Wow. Gabe, can you fit all those in your little shed back there?
Yeah.
That's why you need to buy an office.
That's right. I'm curious. So the first graph we looked at that was all animated, that didn't have anything sub 100, right?
Right. Yep.
Hmm.
That was
That's
just
really-
comparison of based on like a size cohort of each company within the top 100. So how they compare to each other and jockeying for position within that 100. And so this is just the remaining revenue that is outside of the top 100 as a comparison between the NPMA estimates.
Pretty cool, man.
So
I mean, you have one more year like that, and you're back.
And that's what I'm wondering. Is this the start of a trend, or is this a one-time? We had some crazy things happen from COVID and a giant merger and all this fallout. Is this going to settle back to business as usual, where the larger companies are still eating up the market and the small guys don't have a chance? Or is this wow, that was a 10% of the market got captured by small companies. What are they doing right? Is this a kind of look at what you're doing and change some things?
I wonder too, also, I know it seems maybe silly. Every single pest control person out there, except for Pete Schopen, has a podcast now. And every single person out there is on social media, except for Pete Schopen. I just got off of Facebook. I'm just wondering if, once again, at the grassroots level, right? You're seeing this, the smaller guy has a bigger swing with the bat now. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems that way. It seems that way. Now, what I wonder, because there is a lot more coverage, let's say, a lot more people looking at this. I see a lot more talk going on. I haven't seen this analysis. Like I would have expected that somebody much smarter than me would look at this and go, well, we can compile these numbers, and hey, something has happened that has never happened before in 23 years of tracking this. I can't be the smartest person around. That's for sure. We can all agree on that one. So how come we're not talking about this? How come this isn't something that we hear anywhere else?
I don't know. You'd have to bring it up to PCT because it's their little chart.
Sure.
You'd have to bring it up to them and see. Maybe it might be a good article waiting to happen.
Yeah, jeepers.
Byline by Andy.
Yeah, I don't know.
I suspect some level of it is there's probably, as we've seen in other areas, when you have like a lot of one-man operators, which is most of the sub 100 owners. I just don't know if there's a whole lot of people that have the interest in like doing that or the capacity, to even.
Yeah.
Like if you hadn't sent me that, I probably never would have even noticed, that I would have just read through that's cool, looks great. I probably wouldn't have even seen it.
Right. Well, I mean, to me, it was, I don't know, heartening. I was like, holy cow, this is awesome. This is fantastic. It made me want to go out there and be like, Sarah, let's go sell some more accounts. Let's get after this.
Yeah.
In a world where people are lost in pest control, that's when Andy and Gabe step up, coast to coast, baby. Another week, another dime drop. Boom.